If I talk faster and you listen faster, we can get out of here faster and cover all the same stuff.
Good.
All right, and Alice will now handle any questions. Okay, so we're going to talk about lobbyists. I'm a lobbyist. I hate that term. My business card says policy director. That's my title. But at the end of the day, I try to influence legislation, and so I truly am a lobbyist. I found this picture a number of years ago. What my friends and most of my family thinks I do is out wining and dining with legislators on these very highfalutin fancy meals. My parents think that this is a picture of the Oval Office. Most of my family asks me, hey, do you still work for the governor? Yes, yeah. Only because that's about as much understanding as they have. Now, the other side, in my world, when we refer to the other side, those are the people, the entities that don't agree with me generally about bills. They think that I murder like baby seals. Society thinks that I just buy legislators and purchase public policy. I think that I'm walking the steps, the corner steps up to Capitol Hill to make my society and my community safer every day. And what I actually do is I sit in a really uncomfortable suit, crowded in with a bunch of other lobbyists in the back of a hearing room for 2 hours at a time, waiting to get my 3 minutes of testimony to people who sometimes seem like they don't care what I have to say. So that's a lot of different opinions about this. But the reality is that lobbyists are everywhere. If you've ever made a public policy suggestion to an elected official, you're a lobbyist too. Welcome to the crowd, it's great. Lobbyists can be paid or volunteer. I'm gonna turn this around so I can see this thing. Will you hold that for me? Don't sing in it. Lobbyists can be paid or they can be volunteer. And there are about 1,200 lobbyists, paid, registered lobbyists. We don't have to have licenses. The one thing we have to do is we have to register as a lobbyist. We have to publicly declare who we are and that we are lobbying on behalf of somebody or something else. And if we get paid to do that, we have to declare how much of our pay is for the lobbying part. And there are about 1,200 lobbyists for 4,685 lobbying entities. Now, if you're a math expert, you think, wait, those numbers don't match. There are things in my industry called contract lobbyists. These are people who they lobby for a wide variety of different groups. I was a contract lobbyist when I first started. I represented the Sheriffs and Police Chiefs Association. I represented the Economic Development Association, the Auto Body Craftsmen Association, the Washington State Good Roads and Transportation Association, the Highway Users Federation, the City of Tacoma, the City of Sumner, Tacoma Public Utility. I had about a dozen clients. And the name of the game, my impression of it, was anybody who would pay enough money, yes, I'll lobby for you. And I'll tell you, I hated that business model. Excuse me. So I left contract lobbying and went to work as what we call an in-house lobbyist for the Washington Association of County Officials, go Waco. And so the WACO, the Association of County Officials, is the only group that I lobbied on behalf of. And then in 2014, I came over in-house to the Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, and I only lobby for law enforcement executives. And so there are a bunch of contract lobbyists, and I'll tell you, that's where the money is. That picture with I've never seen anything like that, but I see people who make a heck of a lot more money than I do. You just have to be willing to do it that way. And a lobbyist, a simple definition, my words of it, is somebody who attempts to influence public policy on behalf of another person or organization. And to get that policymaker to do something they wouldn't otherwise do, right? We wouldn't lobby to go to a legislator to say, breathe. They're gonna breathe, hopefully. They're still breathing, they're already breathing. But to get them to do something that they wouldn't have done otherwise, that's what a lobbyist does. And the keys to that, there are really three. Relationships with those legislators, and it has to be built on trust. The worst possible thing that I could do as a lobbyist is lie. Because all I have is my word. My word and my my trusted relationship, that's my currency. That's my wad of money, because we don't get wads of money to pass out to, and it's illegal to do that, by the way. But my currency is my trust. It's my word. I will tell legislators when they should vote against the interest that I'm lobbying for. They have enough trust in me, and I have enough value in that relationship where I'll say that. I'll say, hey, legislator, I really hate this bill. I think this is a bad bill for public safety, but I think you should vote for it because this is good for your district, right? You're from downtown Seattle and they love all this crime stuff. You should vote in favor. It's Friday afternoon, I can say it. You should vote for that, right? And they have enough trust in me, hopefully, to be able to know that I'm never going to lie to them. Hopefully I have an expertise on the issue. Now, this isn't a requirement for lobbyists. There are plenty of lobbyists that really don't know what it is that they're lobbying about. They just have a lot of relationships with legislators, and somehow it works out to hopefully be something good. But I choose to have an expertise. The rule that I go by is have more answers about a thing than there are questions. Because again, if a legislator trusts me and knows that I know these issues, they're going to rely on me to help them make those decisions. And frankly, a willingness to negotiate in good faith. I go in having written a bill to perfection. And if you want to know whether it's perfect or not, just ask me, I'll tell you it's perfect. But I also have to have a willingness to negotiate in good faith to try to help bring additional people to the table and get more legislators, frankly, to say, you know, James, he's got a point on that. And maybe we need to tinker with this thing because I'm not comfortable with that part. But if he fixes that, then I think we can all get to yes. And I have to be able to do that, or else I'm just simply going to be holding my breath, waiting for perfection for a long time. So know that anybody can lobby the legislature. You could be a lobbyist today and never know about it, right? Never really realize that when you were talking to a legislator or a county commissioner or a city council member or a separately elected, you can't lobby judges on cases. You can actually lobby them on court rules. But you may be a lobbyist and never know it. Lobbying can be done in person. It can be done over the phone with phone calls or text messages. It can be done with old-fashioned letters. It can be done with emails. It can be done by testifying in a public hearing. If she starts doing cartwheels, so somebody just call her that. And it can also be done indirectly too, right? There's a whole industry about indirect lobbying. Some of them are what we call grassroots lobbying. If we had this meeting and I was, instead of trying to tell you, here's how the legislative process works, find the thing that you care about and engage in it. If I was saying, let's talk about crime tonight, and we the sheriffs and police chiefs, like House Bill 4200, go talk to your legislators. That would be indirect lobbying. That would be a reportable thing that I would have to tell the state about, like, hey, I did this grassroots lobbying effort. And that's the thing. There are people who do that. They're also lobbying via the media, right? I don't know if they run them over here, but I know on the west side, during the legislative session, the dentists of all people, they have a lobbying group. They run commercials about oral hygiene and dental health and how it's important for overall health, and tell the legislature to raise reimbursement. I don't know what it is they're asking. I don't pay attention, but I know that they have commercials. Campaigns also make a difference, right? How many people you got campaigns? I've seen them. Campaign signs that are up, right? The ballots are out in the mail. Campaigns make a difference about what legislators do, because those who don't get elected don't get to vote in the legislature. So this is another one of those opportunities to influence, especially right now, and especially in the 7th district, right? Because 2/3 of your legislators are going to be new. What a great opportunity to influence them now. Questions or comments about lobbyists? I try to go fast through that part because people hate lawyers and lobbyists and legislators. Yeah, I'm picking on lawyers. Okay, so we're going to go into finding and tracking bills, and hopefully this will be quicker than the first one. So again, you heard me talk earlier. This is the legislature's website, leg.wa.gov. Right here on bill information, I talked about this is like the honey hole of information on the legislative website. So if we click there, This is, you heard me talk about it earlier, those 4 numbers on a bill. Doesn't matter, House bill, Senate bill, second engrossed, third substitute, House bill, doesn't matter. Just those 4 numbers. You punch them in here and you click search. Make sure you're on bill, not initiative. Or if you're looking for initiative, then do that. And it'll pull up all the information about a bill. But so you could do that if you're interested in this particular bill. That's how you do it. If you're the kind of person where you say, you know what, I want to know what the legislature's doing every single day. They got a spot for that for you too. Every morning, or usually it's late at night because they post them the night before, I click on each of these links. If you can't see it, it says House Introduction, Latest or All, Senate Introductions, Latest or All. So this is what the House introductions for January 8th, the first day of this legislative session, look like. This is one of the things that I read without fail every day during the legislative session. Excuse me, and this is a report of all of the bills that are introduced on first reading, right? We see that introduction and first reading of bills for that legislative day. So I monitor every bill as it comes into that process. And you can see House Bill 1862, it tells you who's sponsoring it. It gives a general, nonpartisan staff summary of what the bill does. This one is providing tax exemptions for the assistance of disabled veterans and members of the armed forces of the United States of America, and it's referred to the Finance Committee. So that gives us a lot of information. This link here, we can click to it, and it's just like if we clicked on, can I go backward? Yeah, it's just like if we clicked on and entered that bill number in there, it'll take us to all the information there. So if you really wanted to pay attention as everything's going into that process, that would be the link for you, the House and the Senate bill introductions there. If you maybe started that process late and you say, I'm gonna keep track of everything that they're doing, all 5,000 some odd bills, good on you. You should probably find some hobbies. But this is the place that you can do that, this bill status report. And what that will pull up, this is a version of it. You can get several different ways to display it, but you can see House Bill 1000, 1001, 2, 3, all the way down, and there are 143 pages of these things, but it gives you lots of information. You can click on the documents that are available for that, whether or not it has a fiscal note, the basic title, whether the bill's still in a committee or whether it's been enacted into law. That second one, House Bill 1000 law, is now Chapter 53, Laws of 2020-2023. You can see the last time that any action was on it, who the sponsor, and if there are any companion bills for that. So a lot of information. Sometimes it might be overwhelming for some folks, but that's there as an option for you. We can also see bills by citation. So let's say that you paid attention to only one statute. Let's say, I forget off the top of my head, is it 46, 64, 100, or 400? What's the one about keep right except for, you wouldn't recall it off the top of your head. Keep right except for passing. I don't remember. Anybody remember that? I had it earlier today. That's right. We don't have to remember anything. But if that was the statute, the only thing that you cared about, you could use this link and you could say, show me any bills that affect that statute only, that section of law. Or you show me any bills that affect Title 43, Chapter 101, which remember earlier is the Criminal Justice Training Commission. You can sort them that way if you were that specific into what laws you cared about. Or you could say, hey, I don't care about all the other that stuff. I care about the Education Committee because I'm an education-minded policy person. You could use this link and you could see, show me every bill that's gone into the House or the Senate or the House and Senate Education Committees, and those are the ones that I want to pay attention to. You can do that this way. You could also say, I don't care about all that committee stuff. There's too many committees and it's too distracting, and why would I pay attention to the process that's designed really to kill most bills? Show me the things that are just about to pass the legislature. Well, those are your links right here. The House Floor Activity Report and the Senate Floor Activity Report. This shows you everything on second and third reading in both of those chambers, any proposed amendments to it, and you can track that stuff real time. If we scroll down on that page, there's even more information here. If you said, I don't care about the committees or the second and third reading, just tell me bills that affect frogs. You could go here, now there really isn't a topic about frogs, but you could go here in the Code Reviser, will develop subject areas that all the different bills touch, or at least that are affected by those bills. And you can go in there and find those things that you care about, and then see all the bills that affect that subject that you're particularly interested in. Or, if none of that's enough for you, you can search them by the individual words that you care about. Let's say, you know what, there isn't a category for frogs, but I bet you they got a bill about frogs. You can use this search document thing, and you can go and type whatever words or phrases you want, and it'll pull, if there are bills about that, or that use those words, it'll tell you, and you can find it right there. The last one that I'll talk about here is if you want to do more than just cursory, in the moment, I only care right now kind of information, bill tracking, this is an incredibly underutilized part of the legislature's website. Interestingly, I actually pay for a bill tracking service because it does a few extra things that most people wouldn't need, but this is incredibly valuable. You can go in and you can say, I care about these particular bills, right? I use the other links that we just talked about, and I got a list of the bills that I care about, and you can tell it to track those, and this bill tracking will, for free, it will monitor that bill, and it'll send you alerts and say, hey, that bill that you care about to put air conditioning in the middle school, that's now been scheduled for a public hearing. Then you can click on it, and you can sign yourself up to testify for that public hearing, or you can say, I don't want to do the public hearing part, but I'm going to send them a letter, or I'm going to call my legislators and say, hey, that's a really good bill because it was hot that night. You can do all that stuff through that tracking process. Or if you only cared about things that are related to law enforcement, you can go to this fantastic website right here, WASPC, WASPIC, Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, and it brings you this wonderfully beautiful picture of my boss at the bottom, your bottom right there. So one of the things that, if you were interested in law enforcement related stuff as it comes to policy, I would encourage you first to look at my boss's newsletter. He does them fairly regularly, about as often as there's enough material to put another newsletter together. And this goes out to every sheriff, every police chief. It's also available to the public. Now, yes, there are things that we send to just law enforcement. Really not that interesting, but we'd like to pretend like it's secret. But his executive director updates, we put a lot of policy related things, not just the legislature, but for example, most recently we've been putting some stuff in there about the State Department of Children, Youth, and Families decision to no longer take juveniles who are convicted of felony offenses, no longer accept them into state juvenile detention facilities. That's kind of a big deal, and those are the sorts of things that we'll talk about there. So if you wanted to, you can check that part of our website. Or if you're interested in the part that I particularly work on, you would click on Programs and Services, click Legislation, and it comes up with this page. It doesn't have a lot of fancy stuff, but there's a lot of content there if you know what you're looking at. The first I would say is here, there are 2 reports that we put on there available to the public at any time that they choose. One of them is what we call a bill status report. Every piece of legislation that I'm tracking or working on during a legislative session is listed there. So if you want to know, hey, legislative session's going, what's James working on? That's my list. I work on about 800 pieces of legislation every legislative session, and you'll see them all there, and your eyes will roll back in your head just like mine do. But come check it out, and you'll see the status of every one of those bills. That other link, the upcoming events report, is which of those bills that I'm tracking are scheduled for some kind of a committee hearing in the next week, right? So you could say, hey, there's that bill that James was talking about to put air conditioning in the middle school. That's on the tracking list, and I see that scheduled for a public hearing next week. I want to go testify. I'm going to drive to Olympia, or I'm going to do it on Zoom, or I'm going to contact my legislators, whatever it may be. Questions or comments about that part, identifying and tracking bills? I threw a lot at you. Okay, you got all of it. Okay, we're going to go into some legislative lessons. Now, not every good, these also have disclaimers. Remember, I put disclaimers at the very beginning. So this presentation is intended to share real lessons that I've learned over my 20 some odd years doing this. A lot of these are presented in jest, but they are real lessons. And they're not intended to insult any person or anybody else. No matter what I say, I'm not talking about you or your legislators. And if you really think that I am, I probably am, but I'm never going to admit it, so just don't ask me. If you've heard these lessons before, I give credit to the person who made them up. If you've never heard them, feel free to give me credit as much as you'd like. I gave the last one, I gave it in the wrong order. If you've seen or heard these before, just act like you're paying attention so that the others think that this is important stuff. And then the part about the credit. So our first rule here, when you choose to play in the legislature, you choose to play by their rules. This is something, candidly, sheriffs and police chiefs hate this part, right? Because they are the chief executive of their agency. They get to walk around all day, right, sheriff, and go do this thing and go do that, and everybody says, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, like, I'm on it, okay, getting it done, boss. Sheriffs and police chiefs, they don't even get to do that in the legislature, right? Legislators are kind of the big dogs in that world, and you have to sign up to go testify in a committee hearing. You have to sign up once the bill is on the committee agenda, and you can only sign up until an hour before the committee hearing starts. If you show up at the last minute or you decide at the last minute they don't let you testify, sucks to be you. Those are the rules that they have, and you chose to play in their world. It's your world really, but they get to make the rules. It's incredibly frustrating for me sometimes when the legislative process, I feel like it's working against me, but that's the work that I chose to do. And so we have to understand that. You've got to know who your legislators are. How many knew the names of your 3 legislators before I named them off tonight? Almost everybody here. You know what? Just raise your hand. You don't be the odd one out. Everybody raise your hand. Everybody's asked somebody for a favor, right? Let's say you buy a new dishwasher, and you're the only person home, or you live alone, and the hardware store delivers the dishwasher, and like, great, we'll put it in your driveway for you. The rest of it's up to you because you didn't pay the $100 to have us install it. You got to call a friend, right? Hey, I got a new dishwasher. Can you come over and help me take this thing inside? It's hard enough to get friends to do you favors. How many of you have asked a complete stranger to help you bring a dishwasher in your house? How many would? We're talking about a dishwasher, right? What if we're talking about changing the law? If you've never spoken to your legislator, how effective do you think it is if you call them up in the middle of a session and say, I need you to listen to my thoughts about this bill, because I just discovered it and I don't know who you are, but you represent me, and like, you really got to pay attention to what I'm saying. If that works, good on you. It's never worked for me. You got to know who they are. You got to spend time with them, meet with them, because they work for you, frankly. And like, take advantage of that part of the process. Don't just talk to them during the legislative session, because the legislature, the body, when they're in session, is not the best place to lobby a legislator. I spend a significant amount of time this time of the year meeting with legislators, talking about things, debriefing them from the 2024 legislative session, and I'm already working on bills for 2025, right? I know who legislators are, and I'm working them, I'm lobbying them well in advance of when it's time for them to vote. If you ever want to know what's wrong with an idea, introduce it as a bill. There have been bills that have been written to perfection and they go down in flames because everybody hates them, right? If we wrote a bill tonight and we say, we got the perfect bill. I love puppies, or puppies are cute. Let's not even do the puppies are cute. Somebody's going to come out and oppose it, right? I'm allergic to dogs. Well, that puppy kept, I had a puppy and it peed all over my house, or it chewed up on all my shoes, or puppies grown up to be big adults and they scare people, or whatever the thing. I like cats better, or I like gerbils, right? Somebody will find a reason to share why your grand idea was a terrible one, and you got to expect that when you go into the legislative process. It just happens. It's job security for people like me. Sometimes we just make it up, but that way we keep a job. If it's important enough to change the law, it's important enough to plan ahead, right? Again, let's use the dishwasher example. It's a way different thing. If you called a friend and said, hey, my dishwasher broke, I ordered one, it's gonna be here next Friday. Can you come help me? It's still weird, but if you went to a stranger and said, hey, my dishwasher broke, I don't have anybody to help me, but it's gonna be here next Friday. Can you take another walk down the street next Friday and help me bring it in? But at least if you give them the opportunity to plan ahead, if you call your legislator right in the middle of legislative session, and you say, hey, I need you to introduce a bill that, says such and such, that everybody loves puppies, that's a really tough position to put them in if you can get them on the phone, especially if you don't know them. But if you're talking to them ahead of time and you're planning ahead and you're thinking about the weaknesses of your idea or the weaknesses of everybody else's idea, because you don't like any bills whatsoever, and you plan ahead in that process and you're working with them in that advanced planning, your chances of success go up a lot. Also know that bills sometimes pass and fail for reasons other than the bill. Now, I'm not going to imply that pure party politics or elections play a role in policymaking. I'm just open to the possibility that they could, sometimes. Or if a legislator does something really stupid, or says something really stupid on social media or whatever, and that's the sponsor of your prized possession piece of legislation, it could raise the chances that your bill isn't going to pass simply because you had it sponsored by a legislator that subsequently did some very, very unpopular thing. And we just got to know that, right? Because it's still people who populate these positions and people who influence, and we're all infallible, and sometimes we do stupid things. Once you're into this process, you have to remember that the process is designed to kill bills unless you oppose them. Now, if you're wondering how can that make sense, trust me, I've been doing this long time. This is exactly how it works. And Mary Ann and Tammy and the sheriff have all seen that plenty of times. If I'm lobbying in favor of a bill, trying to get the law changed the way that particular bill reads, I'm telling you, this process is designed to kill bills. Things like the Rules Committee, things like the cutoff dates, other people's amendments, it's just coming at you from all angles. But if I oppose a bill, it seems like that sucker's on, it's just the skids are greased. And it just goes no matter what I throw at it. And again, I choose to play in the legislature, so I have to abide by those rules, even though sometimes it gets frustrating. Everybody else lies in this process. We don't. Ever. It's just the way that it is. There are people, yes. I have seen people blatantly lie in the legislative process and get away with it. I've seen people blatantly lie and lose their careers because of it. That is never a risk that I will take. And as my friends and people that I'm coaching about how to get into this crazy world, don't ever do it. Even if you win and you get away with it that time, it's never worth it. Ever, ever, ever. Everybody else lies. Go ahead.
I think it was 2 years ago or one and a half years ago, where it was some kind of expert that testified as to the pursuit rates or something. Was WASPIC involved in exposing that?
Allegedly.
Ah. Sorry. Because I think that was an example of where his career kind of like went down in flames for at least a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. That's ringing a little bit of a bell with me. So just because you're right doesn't mean they'll agree with you. This happens within my family all the time, where I tell them I'm right. And they're like, we don't care. You're still not. This is true in policymaking as well. For some reason, people have their own opinions. It still baffles me, but remember that, right? You can be entirely right and still not have people have people agree with you. Getting emotional or angry doesn't help you either. I've seen a lot of people do this and sometimes it will happen. Like sometimes you get a short-term win. Somebody comes in and like literally it's just weird when they do that, but they literally bang their fist on the table. This is a really big deal, or they're like, they have their protest outside. You may get lucky, right? A broken clock is right twice a day. It may be just that right time, but it's just not a good strategy, especially if you ever want to have another idea or you ever want to influence another bill. Just be nice, be professional, be honest, and engage with it. And that's really all you have to have. This is one that I truly live by. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. I think that one just kind of stands on its own. If you mean it, say it. If you say it, mean it. There are times where people get into that world. Now, when you're actually in the Capitol building or any of the office buildings where the hearing rooms are at, it's kind of weird, right? It doesn't feel like the real world. Everybody's wearing business attire, and the buildings, they're like all marble. All the inside is marble. I mean, some of the hearing rooms have carpet, and there are cameras everywhere, and everybody's all fancy, and legislators running around. And it kind of, it's just a different environment. It's easy to get caught up in that. There are people that get to testifying, and their mouth goes, and their brain's way back here, and they find themselves in trouble. I have always taken the approach of, if I mean it, that's what I'm gonna say. And if I say it, I'm gonna stand by it. People like to do these very fancy political doublespeak things, and sometimes I understand. If they say it in crayon, I can understand most of it. But just be real people, right? Don't try to mimic, there's a whole like talk to it. Don't try to mimic it. Just go up there, be a real person, talk about real things, how they affect real people, and that's the most effective thing that you can do. Don't forget that everybody else is pretty important too. The example that I gave earlier about the legislative assistants, right? People who come down to Olympia, especially you all, if you come from this corner of the state, you drive all the way to Olympia. If I were you, I'd walk in and be like, hey, somebody needs to give me a ham sandwich and a chair, because that was a long drive, and everybody needs to gather around and listen to what I have to share with you. But you have to recognize everybody else is in that same position, right? Whether it was a short drive or a long drive, whether they're elected or a paid lobbyist, or just an everyday Joe or Jane who came to the legislature, they're pretty important too. The people who work in the cafeteria, the security guards, the legislative assistants, the partisan staff, the nonpartisan staff, even lobbyists sometimes feel like they're important. Just, again, be nice to people. You never know who that stranger is in the elevator that you were all snippy to because you felt like they were standing too close. Maybe the person that you'd requested the meeting with. And when you get in the room, it's going to be really awkward. So just be nice, because everybody's important. When in doubt, read the bill. Now, I put this in jest. I couldn't tell you the number of times that I'm negotiating a piece of legislation with somebody who's not read the bill. Now, they may think that they've read the bill when they've actually read what's called a bill report. It's a nonpartisan staff summary of the bill, kind of in plain language. But that's not actually what the legislature is voting on. When we saw earlier about the new section and the strike-throughs and the underlines, that's the law. That's what the legislature is voting. They're not voting on the staff summaries. They're not voting on somebody's characterization of it in a Facebook post. They're not voting on what they think they understand. They're voting on what it actually says. So when in doubt, read the bill. Now my suggestion is start by reading the bill, and we showed you how to do that tonight. Allegedly, it may happen all of the time where legislators are voting on bills that they've never actually read. There are a few legislators who make it a practice to read bills, like actually sit down and read them, which is a very time-consuming and often confusing process. But if it's important enough, just read it. That way you know what it says. Some things aren't worth fighting for, right? It's easy to get in there. When I look through all those bills, I see things that I think are great ideas and really terrible ideas. But if they don't have to do with in that box of public safety, I don't get involved in them. And there are some things that I think are great ideas and terrible ideas, even in that box of public safety, that I choose not to get involved in, because I have to find those things. I have to learn and identify which of those things that are worth fighting for, because I only have so much capital, and you only have so much capital. If you're calling your legislator every single day saying, I got another list of really terrible bills that you got to vote against, right? They're be like, oh, Bob's calling again, right? You got to know, stay engaged enough that they remember who you are and they care about what you think, but don't be that person. Don't be that gal. Don't be that guy. Just find out where that happy medium is on the dial. And remember that the legislature meets every year. The second Monday of every January is the first day of the next legislative session. Again, that's job security for people like me. Sometimes you should be terrified, sometimes you should be excited. But know, whether it's good news or bad news to you, the legislature convenes every January. There's always another opportunity to re-propose the bill that you liked or try to get it passed, to defeat the bill that's going to come back again that you didn't like, or if you just lost your tail you know what? A statute that the legislature enacted this year can be repealed by the legislature next year. So you could start talking about a bill in the 2025 legislative session that repeals everything that you lost on that just got added into there. And then finally, it's one of my favorite quotes. Remember what former U.S. Senator Everett Dirksen said, "I'm a man of fixed and unbending principles, the first of which is to be flexible at all times." Any final questions or comments? Because next is the, go ahead.
My comment is this was wonderful, really well done, very helpful, so thank you. And my question that I'll lead up to is around accumulation of influence, and the power to get people to do what you want them to do. And the context for the question is everyone who either lives in Ponderay County or has spent any time here falls in love with it because it is a wonderful, wonderful place. The fact of life is, I would bet that a strong majority of legislators in Olympia have never been to Ponderay County and maybe can't pronounce it properly. So, given that Ponderay County has about 0.2% of the population of the state of Washington, and about 10% of the population of the 7th legislative district, what have you seen that people do? You know, they may be, they're mighty but small. What have you seen that people do to either build coalitions or to accumulate power around an issue that's important to them, that on their own, 0.2%, 10%, they're probably not going to get much traction?
Yeah. Wow, great question. You just went for the whole thing. As you were asking that, I was reminded of my grandma was actually who she was named after. My grandma was a very short gal and about 90 pounds soaking wet. She often reminded me that dynamite comes in small packages too. So my answer to your question is you got to rise to the occasion. And I would encourage you, don't make it about being from the corner of the state in little old Ponderay County that nobody can pronounce and nobody's ever been to. Make it about that thing that you're talking about, right? Unless the thing is, it's about the county, which of course it needs to be. That just means you got to rise to the occasion. You got to work harder. You got to be creative in finding. Ponderay's not the only small, rural, underserved county in the state, right? Think about, of course, Ferry County. Think about Okanagan County. Think about Lincoln County. Nobody ever talks about Wahkiakum County. I'm thinking down south. Garfield County. Thank you. So depending on what your thing is, what your issue is, there's already a half a dozen small, either small by geography or small by population, rural underserved counties that you can find as potential coalition members. But at the end of the day, it just means you got to work harder. You're never just by sheer brute force gonna get the votes to outvote Seattle, right? Go back to that one slide that we had of a legislative district. Your guys' district is huge. You got 6 counties in it. There are more than 6 legislative districts in King County alone. So the math there, it's just never gonna work. You gotta rise to the occasion, right? There's that the quote, I'm not gonna get it right, but never doubt that a small group of dedicated people can change the world, because indeed that's the only thing that ever has. That's the approach you gotta take.
I think you assisted us in helping against a very large municipality on the west side, the little old Ponderay County, or even the Goliath story. So it happens. We took on City of Seattle and won.
Yeah. Other questions? Go ahead.
Another example is House Bill 1152 in 2021 about consolidating all of the health districts under Olympia over the west side. And because I wrote an extensive article about it in January of 2021, thanks to the help of a then retired commissioner whose name I won't mention because I don't know if I have permission to.
Okay.
But it was so apparently it was poignant enough that our Tri-County Health District Director sent it to Senator Short, and she was actually using those points a lot to argue for the fact that some health districts in Washington state already met all the requirements that the state was claiming no one did. And our district actually maintained a certain amount of, what's the word I'm looking for, not anonymity, autonomy during the whole pandemic issue because of her almost doing a filibuster, and it was because of an extensive argument that she was able to bring forward, and we prevailed. Our Tri-County Health District just had to add 2 positions to the board, and that was it, and we did it.
Yeah.
But if no one had spoken up, even from little old Pomeroy County, we would have been swallowed into the West End, and it resulted in quite a lot of different policy changes in the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. Good on you. That's how you do it. Other questions, comments?
Most influence, writing, testifying at a public hearing, or legislative aid?
All of them. All of them. It depends on how important it is, right? There are bills, I mean, candidly, there are bills that, whether it's because I don't care about it enough, or I don't think sheriffs and police chiefs care about it enough, and I'm kind of checking the box, or hypothetically, if I have a high degree of confidence that I already know the outcome, there are times that I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go sign in, right? Remember one of those things where I can just note my position for the legislative record. But if it's something that's really important, you know, back to that one lesson about some things are worth fighting for, some aren't. And the key is you got to know the difference. If it's a really important thing, I leave nothing to chance, right? There's not a single one of the 147 legislators that I don't attempt to talk to about that issue. There's not a single public hearing that I will not show up and take my full 3 minutes, or if I can get 3.5, I'm just gonna talk right through the light. There's not a single time that I won't send out an email to every sheriff and police chief and say, hey, you gotta talk to your legislators about things, right? I mean, it's a full court press, but if it's not that important, I'll just kind of do a little thing. It depends on which one. Now, if you could only choose one, are you in favor of it or against it, hypothetically?
What?
Whatever the thing is.
I'd be in favor of it.
There's, okay, writing a letter,
Hard copy letter or email?
email.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about contacting legislatures other than those that represent us in the 7th
Yeah,
district?
great question. So when I get sheriffs and police chiefs that ask me, like, you know, hey, let's use Sheriff Lacey. He's like, James, you want me to go talk to my legislators? Like, I already talked to them. I've been talking to them about these things for 3 years now. They already agreed. I said, great, you got 144 more to go. Like, get to work. There's absolutely nothing that says you can only talk to your own legislators. Now,
Okay.
you could have a legislator say, I represent Kirkland. Why are you calling me? You're not. But you know what? Let them do that, right? Because I also strongly believe the answer is always no if you never ask. They're not going to support you if you don't ask them, if you don't give them a chance to. Yeah. Make them tell you no. And again, it depends on how important it is to you. Other questions?
Any other questions for James? Let's give him a round of applause. And again, just so you guys know, James volunteered to come do this. We planted an idea that we wanted information for our public. He came up with the idea. I think it's a fantastic presentation. Just for those of you that are here, understand, early on in the live streaming, there were some issues with the signals and stuff, so the whole thing was not live streamed, but it has been recorded, and Sonia's gonna make sure it is available to folks. So we'll still get that out on our Facebook and web pages and stuff, so people can still access it. But they were not able to take advantage of the full live stream. So if anybody asks about that, let them know there is a fix for that.
And I will get the sheriff, you can disregard the one from earlier this week. I found a couple more mistakes. I will email the sheriff, and you've got the PowerPoint as well. And if you want a copy of it, just contact the sheriff and he'll give it to you. Just use it for good things.
Thank
So
you very much.
takeaway for me on this was the little bullet points that he had, or the little bubbles he had that said, here's a point where you can influence. It's been my experience that people wait until the last second when they're gonna vote on a bill and are like, don't do that. We should have been there months ago. So taking advantage of those things like voting, you know, we have a governor that's gonna change. We have our representatives that are gonna change, potentially some changes within the county itself. Those things can make a difference. So start your voice with your vote. Okay?
So that triggers another question actually. So there have been times where I've tried to follow some proposed laws, bills, and I think this is gonna be a really big issue, and it just completely dies.
Yeah.
And there are other, so like I have followed so many for the paper where they just go nowhere. And I have a very limited staff. I know that there's no crystal ball to this, but is there any sort of like threshold or criteria, like if it goes through 3 iterations, that it's most likely gonna continue, or 5, or can it die anywhere along the route? Like, is there a pattern to this? Anything?
No, yeah, Mary Ann's right. Bills that, so no, there is no pattern, right? There's no, like, usually, right? There are bills that pass the one chamber every year without fail and never get any traction in the other chamber. There are bills that die in the same committee every year, and if the committee chair ever allowed to vote on that bill, it would pass overwhelmingly and it would sail through the whole rest of the legislature, but one person follows it up. And so there's no rhyme or reason, right? It's 147 people, individual people with their own beliefs, their own team, their own district, they're like all of that stuff together, and that exists for a 2-year period. And even there's slight changes between the year 1, year 2, if somebody retires or moves on to another office or gets a better job or something. But that like really weird like kaleidoscope is the best. That picture in the kaleidoscope only exists for 2 sessions and then it's gone. And the next one is brand new. The only thing that's the same is the system. And so there's no rhyme or reason to it. And frankly, that's why people end up hiring lobbyists, which is it's like, you shouldn't have to be able to have to do that. But yeah.
So I've got another question if nobody, okay. So on our ballot, there very often it'll say this measure or this was passed without benefit of going to a vote. How does that happen? How does a law get implemented that then ends up on the ballot that is asking for a vote? And I'm not talking about a recall. It might be naive, but I really don't understand how that happens. If it's supposed to be voted upon, how does it get implemented without being voted on? I don't understand.
So if I'm tracking you correctly, it's one of 2 things, one of which just recently went away. So by initiative, the people a number of years ago, Marion, do you remember the things that raised taxes or fees? It was one of the IMAN initiatives. It was a long time ago. There was an initiative that passed that said anytime the legislature raises taxes or fees, there has to be what's called an advisory vote on the next general election ballot, where it generally, and hopefully this is ringing a bell with you, it'll say the legislature passed without a vote of the people, House Bill 1001 to raise natural gas excise taxes by 0.2%. This is going to cost $400 million over the next 10 years. Should this be retained or rejected, right? Those are advisory votes that were created ironically by a vote of the people. There's also what's called a referendum vote. So if the legislature passes a bill, most bills take effect, I forget if it's 60 or 90, it's been a long day. Let's say 90 days after adjournment of the legislative session in which they were passed. So if the legislative session ends on April 17th, count out 90 days from then, and that's when it takes place. The reason for that delay is if a group of citizens really don't like that bill, they can go gather signatures for a referendum to say, wait a minute, our legislature passed this, but before that law takes effect, we're gonna let the rest of the state vote on it. We're gonna let the people who have the ultimate power decide, and implementation gets delayed and it goes on your ballot as a referendum.
Sonny, I think the ones you're talking about are probably the advisory votes, and that's where we're giving the legislator our opinion. Where you put repeal or approve, they don't have to take what the people say on that. It's just giving them our opinion on those ones.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
Yeah, and the
Thank
good
you.
news for you then is the legislature, I think this year, repealed the advisory vote statute, so you won't see those anymore. But if you liked them, they'll be bad news for you.
No, no. Thank you, thank you,
Of course.
thank you very much.
Other questions, comments?
All right, how about one more round of applause for James and for his family who's been with
Thank you for sweating it out with us. We made it work.
Thanks for organizing this event.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you, Sheriff.
I wish it was bigger, but it helps. We appreciate it.
There were more than 3.
There were.